Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I'm going to be ranking the best cards of June to LIGHTSPEED. Thanks to Card Market for sponsoring this video. Card Market is the biggest marketplace in Europe to buy and sell Star Wars Unlimited cards. Also want to give a little reminder that I'm currently putting together a team for to play competitive Star Wars Unlimited. It is going to be called Enigma. And it is going to be, the starting rosters is the 6 handsome gentlemen that you see in front of you. If you want to know more about what we're trying to achieve with this team and the reason we call like this and our logos and all that, you can check out the post that I've made on the Thought Optics community tab. So you just click on the post and you can read. I'm explaining in a bit more details what this is all about. Anyway, thank you so much for the people who are going to be supporting us through our competitive journey of Star Wars Unlimited. So, as usual in this video, I'm going to be ranking the best cards in the new sets, going from the 3 best cards. I'm going to give a gold, silver, and bronze medal. Might do some honorable mention if there's other cards that I think could have made the top 3, but just the category was very competitive, so it didn't quite make it. Obviously, we are about a week before release, so obviously everything I say has to be taken with a grain of salt. I try my best, of course, to playtest as many of those cards as possible. Obviously, it's been only like a couple of weeks, I think a week since we had the full card pool, so obviously not easy to do so much testing in such a short period of time. So obviously take this into account, and obviously, as it is the tradition, at the end of the set I'll be revising this ranking in the light of the new meta and kind of like see. So this is going to be, of course, a lot more advanced, and because most of those cards I've tested them compared to my first impression videos, but it is still going to remain, of course, we're still 1 week before release, there's still no meta. Meta is very important to evaluate cards because it's very difficult to evaluate cards in a vacuum. It's much more accurate to evaluate cards in the context of a meta game, and we don't know what the meta is going to be yet. So this is obviously, all those things have to be taken into account. So we're starting off with Cunning Villainy. So in Cunning Villainies, first of all, I got an honorable mention with Contracted Jump Master. I like this card in 2 specific kind of decks. I like it in as a space unit, of course, for the Underworld Cat Bane decks. I think depending on the meta, once again, it's going to be meta dependent. Having access to a Sentinels 2/4 that comes to play, deals the damage, can be quite valuable. I also think this card is a pretty good improvement over the Black Sun Starfighter as a 3-drop Villainy that you can Sentinels in space that you can search with Darth Vader, that will allow you to kind of block up the space arena. And I think this is, so if you're playing a yellow, green, black, yellow deck, and you're looking for a Sentinels in space that you can grab from Vader, I think this is like a very good pick. So I think this card is going to see some competitive play, and it's potentially quite good. In Bronze Medal, so really I had really to debate in my head whether I think Mist Hunter or Contracted Jump Masters were going to be on the 3rd place here, because they both occupy kind of the same slots in the same color combination, and they're both Underworld, which means that they are both going to be triggering Cat Bane, which is a big deal. So I decided ultimately to put Mist Hunter first, because I think it has obviously better stat at 3/4. We're not sure yet if the Sentinel is going to be super incredibly relevant. It also has a non-attack ability, which I think is quite relevant. All you need to do is play a Bounty Hunter or a Pilot, and then you get an attack and draw a card, which I think is quite relevant, even though it is kind of a niche ability. But I think Mist Hunter, I think, is quite a bit of an improvement over the punishing one. So I'm pretty sure that Cat Bane will prefer to play Mist Hunter or the Jump Master over the punishing one, and for that reason alone deserves the bronze medal. In silver, I decided to put Boba Fett, another very good addition to Cat Bane, as we're currently getting a 5/4 for 5 shielded that can also be a pilot, and that pilot has an immediate impact, meaning that even if the unit that gets equipped with gets dealt with, we still got some value. And it also gives some significant stat, +2/+3. You get to deal 1 damage, very good combination with Stark in Town. So any deck that plays Villainy, Cunning, Tarkin Town is potentially going to be looking at this card is it's a flexible ground, upgrades, and if you get a transport, which there are quite a few of in the game, you deal 2 damage instead of 1. I think all this makes this card really solid, and I think it's going to see some significant competitive play. In number one spot, I decided to put Invincible. This card is amazing in a couple of decks. So obviously you can play it as early as turn 2 in a Doku deck because you get the discount for Separatist, and then you get to exploit. Any unit. You're still gonna leave a token behind most likely if you are basically exploiting a Confederate Courier, and you get yourself a 6/6 for 5, which is just by itself extremely powerful. And the when deploy leader's ability is only icing on the cake. Later on, you deploy your leader, you get to bounce something, and that just is very, very effective. So obviously there's a way to play around this, but as I said, even if it had no ability, just being a 6/6 that you can play on turn 2 in space is by itself very powerful. Any barrage that you want to play after that is going to become insanely powerful. So it's very good in there. I think it's also quite good in a number of decks. So there's obviously the combination with Trench, where you get to deploy your leaders over and over again, can use the ability multiple times. And obviously, it's even good in Piet. So Piet, you don't get the discount for Separatist, but you do get the discount for the leader himself. The leader himself, obviously, because he discounts all capital ships. So here again, it's another way to get a 6/6 for 5. And because Piet deploys on 5, you can play the Invincible and then deploy Piet to get the bounce effect almost right away. So you get a 6/6 for 5 that bounce something when it comes after deployment leaders. That's just, in my opinion, is very, very powerful. So obviously, whether this card is going to see a lot of play in the meta is going to come down to whether Piet yellow and whether Doku yellow are going to see play. So it is definitely an archetype dependent card, but I think it is strong enough and it is a boost, enough of a boost in this specific archetypes that it's worth it to be put at the first spot. Once again, every time I put an archetype specific card high on the list, of course, and number 1, I always take a risk because, once again, there's no guarantee that Piet yellow and Doku yellow are going to see competitive play. Of course, it's all going to come down to a lot of factors. So now we're going to Cunning Heroism, a color combination that got a lot of helps in set 4. It's actually that got a lot of help in set 4. So let's see how much help they get in set. A lot of help in set 3. Let's see how much help they get in set 4. So in bronze we got Fireball. Fireball is really, really strong as in a Kazuda deck because you're basically getting a 3/3 for 2 with no downside. That can also ambush if you wanted to. This card is incredible. If there's a unit on the other side, well, it's a 2/2 for 3 ambush. You kill A-Wing, you stay alive. That's just incredibly game breaking and just and it's also kind of and if there's no space unit on the other side, it just basically plays as a 3/3 for 2. I think this card is going to have significant impact on the meta because by itself, it's going to make it so playing a 3 health space unit on turn 1 is going to become kind of difficult for that reason. So obviously the card is playable outside of Kazuda. It's kind of like because it's kind of it's kind of like a cloud rider in space. Obviously, cloud rider in space limited, of course, to 2 aspects. So there's this caveat here. So in my opinion, this card is just really good. The reason why I didn't put it higher up in the ranking on the podium is because it is very. I think that as a cloud rider, it's unlikely to see a lot of play. I think it's mostly going to just be a great card in Kazuda. So it's currently kind of limited to a specific leader. So once again, those archetype specific cards are a bit difficult to rank because if the archetype sees a lot of play, this card is going to be absolutely everywhere. It's going to have a significant impact on the meta. If the leader doesn't see play, then the card is going to become a lot more niche. So I put it in bronze for that reason. In silver medal, some people might be surprised to see Han Solo only at silver medal. I think Han Solo is great, but he's just not as great as I thought he would be, but he's still very good. So turns out 4/5 for 5 ambush nowadays is just not that good. So you're mostly playing him for his piloting ability, so you need to basically be playing a deck that does play significant more space units to make use of it. Of course, the flexibility of playing it as a 4/5 ambush is great, but it is mostly for the piloting that you're doing it. Then +2/+2 for 3 and get to attack right away is very strong, obviously. and then the fact that it can also have some additional effect on Falcons, which see a wide amount of play, is incredible. So he's obviously by far the best pilots available in this color combination, and I don't think any is a very strong reason to be playing a lot of space unit if you're going for Cunning Heroism. But he's very good and well deserving of a silver medal. But the number one in this list is, in my opinion, is going to see possibly a wider amount of play, and that's Ahsoka Tano. Honestly, it's very good, very close between Ahsoka and Han Solo. I just think that Ahsoka just fits in the current build that we've seen succeeding in set 2 of Heroism, Cunning Heroism a little bit better than Han Solo. So what is so good about her? Basically, she's kind of like a Kira, but she is force. She has a force rate which is huge, as we know. We those kind of obviously we play this in. This is just a huge upgrade to Quinlan, as it combines very well with fourth throw. You discard a card and then you get to make your fourth throw better. You have a fourth unit into play. And the effect that if it's a unit gets discarded, you get to exhaust a unit. This effect here is actually a lot more powerful than it seems at first. It really, sometimes your opponent just simply only has unit in hand, so being able to tap a unit, exhaust a card, discard a unit, and get a 3/5, all this for 4 resources is just absolutely outstanding. And sometimes forcing to discard a strong event, because the opponent does not want to suffer the exhaust effect, is actually very relevant. So I think Ahsoka Tano is she going to replace Kira in every single deck? I don't necessarily think so. I still think there's going to be some deck that are going to prefer to play Kira, but in my opinion, she's going to replace Kira in the majority of Cunning Heroism decks. So she's obviously deserving of gold medal for that reason. Obviously, you can basically swap those two kind of. You could put Ahsoka Tano in silver and Han in first. I don't like. It's really going to come down to the different builds that are going to come down. But currently, I have a slight preference for Ahsoka in this particular spot. In Mono Cunning, so in Mono Cunning, so Cunning Heroism once again is getting a lot of strong card in this set. So Cunning Heroism is going to continue to be a very powerful color in this set as well moving forward. So moving on, we got Mono Cunning. So Mono Cunning is also getting some sweet stuff, so much so that I had to put some honorable mentions. Contracted Hunter, because obviously it's great in Kazuda, not as good as the 3/3/4/2, but still very strong. And then Guerrilla Soldiers, which I found to be one of the best indirect damage available to mono yellow. The fact that you can play it on turn 1 in a hand deck is very powerful, as the opponent really has to choose between either having his unit die and leaving a 2/3 in play, or taking some damage, and then you can go Guerrilla Soldiers can attack right away, which I think is very powerful. So I think it's quite good. If you're playing a very aggressive version of Han, I think Han Yellow, I think Guerrilla Soldier is really worth it. Or even pretty much any aggressive version of Han. Basically, the earlier in the game you play Guerrilla Soldiers, the stronger it is, and the fact that obviously Han can play it on turn 1 consistently is pretty huge. There's also the fact that, you can also play this with Han 2, Han Yellow, and once again play on turn 1 if you're playing Han 2 Yellow as well. So moving on, we got on bronze medal, we got the Stolen Haiti Hauler, which is a pretty big upgrade, which is obviously one of the big reasons once again to play Kazuda. The 4/5/3 is just extremely threatening. Your opponent of course can take control of it, but if you're playing Kazuda, you can kind of cancel that effect, which is very powerful. So in Kazuda, it's obviously an absolute auto-include, a very good card. However, against other decks, it's a little bit more kind of depending on the meta. I think other decks might be able to place Stolen Haiti Hauler if you're playing against a deck that doesn't have an easy way to kill them, and in which case this can be a good sideboard card, and if the 4/5 stat line in space is particularly important to you. In any case, yeah, Stolen Haiti Hauler is great. The reason why it's only bronze medal is because once again, just like the 3/3/4/2, it's kind of dependent on the archetypes, so it's a little bit risky to put it higher up in the list, because if the archetype doesn't see play, then it's obviously going to see no play. So that's why I'm kind of putting it in bronze as a safe measure. With that being said, it has chances to see play outside of Kazuda, and this is obviously a great card, but there's a lot of competition in yellow. And here in the silver meta, we got the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is pretty incredible. I don't think it is worth it to be played if you're not running double yellow, but in double yellow, it's absolutely incredible. The double exhaust ground units, and then you get a 5/6 is just insane impact on the game. It's going to be a very racy meta, in my opinion. So the Mandalorian is just a very, very strong racing card that gives you this massive body. And the piloting, of course, is also very good. +3/+1, and you get to exhaust an enemy in this arena as well for only 2 resource is also very good. So the flexibility is nice once again. So I really, really like Mandalorian. It is obviously going to be played in all double yellow decks. I cannot imagine a double yellow deck not running this card. And for that reason alone, deserving of a silver medal. And in number 1, this might be a surprise to a lot of people because it is considered to be a sideboard card, but Commander is probably, in my opinion, that's going to be a hot take, but I think this is one of the best sideboard cards we've ever seen in Star Wars Unlimited. This card is absolutely incredible. 5 resources, you get to take, it's basically just a much better change of hearts. It can basically take control of any vehicle that costs 6 or less without a pilot. Obviously, this is not, the fact that it has the pilot limitation is not really that big of a deal because most of the time you can just simply wait for the need to drop and then you can play this right away. You get to ready the unit and then attack with it. It's so incredible. It's very swingy. In the meta we're going to be, that's going to be very, very much based on the vehicles. And in the meta where it's going to be like very racy, Commander is incredible. It's one of the strongest counter to one of the strongest card in the game, which is Ruthless Raider. And for that reason is incredible. And the fact that you get to take control of the unit regardless of whether it's ready or not, ready it and then attack with it and then bounce the unit afterward, which is it's a bounce and a steal at the same time, is insane. Insane swing. It just wins game left and right. I think people are going to be playing in the sideboard, and I can totally see this card seeing play in the main deck, depending on. So the fact that this card is basically going to be in the sideboard and sometimes in the main deck on almost every single yellow deck in the game, but for that reason alone is well deserving of the gold medal, in my opinion. Obviously, I can see a meta where this card doesn't see that much play anymore, but I really doubt this is the meta we're going to be in. Then we got another color that got a lot of very strong cards in the set, and that's a Vigilance Villainy. Honorable mention, we got Onyx Squadron Brute, just because this card is going to be an auto-include in every single Thrawn decks, and I think Thrawn is just very good. Iden Versio is another honorable mention because it's a very good upgrade. For basically, generally speaking, aggressive blue-black deck. It's like you play space units on turn 1 and then you play that anniversary on turn 2. It's very strong. You get a lot of bonus stats and you get a shield as well. And you got the flexibility to play it as a ground unit. And it's also Imperial. And but really the reason why I put it up there is because it's such a great card in Gar Saxon, which is really getting a lot of great tools in this set. Basically, either +4/+3 shield for 3 is insane, and on the ground it is a 5/3 shielded for 4, which is just a really great card. It's flexible. It's against certain decks it's very hard to punish, and once again, if you are playing against a deck that can punish the piloting ability, then you can just simply play on the ground, and it's just very strong. In bronze, I decided to put Annihilator. So Annihilator is going to be a niche card, but it's going to be probably like a sideboard card in almost every single control Vigilance Villainy deck. But it is a card that will have a strong impact on the meta because this card is an answer to one of the biggest problems that the control decks have been facing, which is basically Relentless. Relentless has been really, really difficult to deal with for control, especially repetitive amount of Relentless into Palpatine's Returns. Be able to play 2, 3, 4, even sometimes 5 Relentless in a single game is something that control has been really having a hard time dealing with. And an Annihilator is an answer to that. So they were already an answer as a form of Devastator, but this one is obviously available to the non-green control decks, which is a big deal because the hard control decks basically don't play green most of the time. They play either double blue black or they play red blue black, and this card is an answer to it because it defeats it, and it's also obviously get rid of all the copies of it. I mean, you can still obviously bring them back with Palpatine, but already getting rid of half of the roughly half of the Relentless of the opponent deck in one swing is really a big deal, and there's not much your opponent can do to counter it, which is a big deal as well. And then you get a 12/12 that has a when defeated effect that can be doubled if you're playing a Thrawn deck. So this card is really, really strong. Once again, it's going to be a niche card, but I think this card is such a powerful answer that it might have a significant impact on the meta. Granted, if we are in a meta where controls indeed is powerful, which is not necessarily going to be the case. Silver medal, there is no glory, only result. This card is also incredible. It is, in my opinion, exactly what Control wanted in order to deal with certain type of cards. It deals with some of the most problematic cards. So we talked about Chewbacca being very annoying. We also have Locking TIE Phantoms, which was a big problem for the deck. And obviously Ruthless Raider, which has been one of the most powerful anti-control card in set 3. This card is answering all those cards. It's simple as that. It's extremely flexible. It basically deals with everything except its leaders for a reasonable cost. And obviously, once again, if you're playing Thrawn as your leader, you get to double the when defeat effect if there is one. This card is incredible, and it is exactly what Control needed in order to answer kind of the way things have been moving forward, especially with Ruthless Raiders and all. So it's the silver medal, well deserved. And in the gold medal, this is Director Cunning. So this card is so incredible. Once again, 2/2 for 2 shielded is already pretty good. The fact that this one is official and Imperial is huge. There's tons of synergy around both of those traits in the game. It's great in, and of course the discount on the when defeated cards is very, very strong because there's tons of when defeated effect that people play. So this card is a massive upgrade to Gar Saxon, as it is obviously going to be a 3/2 for 2 that give discounts to your when defeated effect, which Gar Saxon can play quite a few if it wants to. And then it has, of course, it's great in Palpatine because you get an official turn 1 that is hard to deal with, and then you can play your Royal Guard, which now are 3/5 Sentinels almost automatically. It just there's just so much going on, so much synergy around this card. Obviously, it's going to be there's going to be a massive difference between a Thrawn deck that is capable of opening up with Chronic turn 1 and a deck that is not capable of, because you get your discount on every single card almost that you play after that. And the fact that it has this discount effect and at the same time is going to be difficult to deal with is just a deadly combination. This card is incredible. It's going to see play in so many decks. It's not an auto include, obviously. You need to have a couple of when defeated effect, and you need to care about having a 2/2 shielded official in play, but it is definitely strong enough that it's well deserving a gold medal. So really, Villainy, Vigilance got a lot of great cards in this set. Now we move on to Heroism, Vigilance, and for the second time in a row, this color combination is not really getting a whole lot, which is a little bit disappointing because already in set 3 they didn't really get pretty much nothing. So this set is a little bit similar in that regard. So on Bronze medal, they decided to put You All Clear Kid. This card is kind of nice because it's a removal and give an experience token. Obviously, you need to have the right targets for it, and then you have to unit in play. So there's a couple of things that needs to happen. But in the right situation, it's pretty great. And depending on the meta, this can be a very, very strong addition to Heroism Vigilance. It's very meta dependent, so it's a bit difficult to know. And it's also, you can't play this in any deck. But I still think it's a good card and deserving of a bronze medal. Moving on, we got Peiji Taiko, which is, simply put, in my opinion, one of the best 2-drop that Heroism Vigilance has been access to. We know that because of Battlefield Marine, it is very important for 2-drops to have 3 attacks to be able to trade with Battlefield Marine, as opposed to being a 2/3, sorry. So 3/2 for 2 already is kind of nice for an Heroism Vigilance deck, and which didn't have access to a lot of them. So that's already kind of a nice thing. But then, obviously, the piloting ability is very strong. Get a +2/+2 Statland for 2, and then on attack, give an experience and deal 1 damage. So basically, on attack, he gets a permanent +1 attack bonus, which I think can be quite good as well. So the flexibility is nice. It's a good 2-drop for Heroism Vigilance deck. So I think it's a good card. Moving on to number 1 is going to be the Red Squadron X-Wing. This card is really a solid card. 3/4 for 3, obviously not bad, but the flexibility that you can deal 2 damage to it to draw a card is very nice. There's loads of ways to heal your own units in this color combination. I don't know exactly what deck is going to be wanting to play that card, but I think in my opinion, it is definitely going to be the most widely played Heroism Vigilance cards in the set, and that's why I put it at number 1. Once again, as I said, Heroism Vigilance did not really get a whole lot going on in this set, unfortunately. Moving on, we go to Mono Vigilance, which also did not really get a whole lot going on in this set. I'm going to start with my bronze with Corporate Defense Shuttle. This card may seem completely unplayable, but actually is really amazing in Kazuda. So in Kazuda, it is very simple, just a 3/5 for 2 in space, without downside, of course, because you're using Kazuda's ability to remove any negative ability, any ability for that matter. So 3/5 for 2 in space is just very, very, very nasty. 3/5 for 3 is already considered to be one of the best stat lines in the game. So having a 3/5 for 2 is just insane, and even more so in space, which usually space units have weaker stats than ground units. So this card is really going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent, cannot really die to ping plus Tarkin Town, and in my opinion this card is single-handedly going to, basically right now I think Kazuda Yellow is probably the most common way to play Kazuda, but I think this card single-handedly makes Kazuda Blue a real option, because this card is such an amazing upgrade to this deck. So I think this is like a kind of a card that went under the radar because it hasn't been really properly spoiled. But yeah, it's a card that I think is really incredible in Kazuda, and for that reason alone deserves to be bronze medal. Obviously, it is very archetype dependent. We don't know if Kazuda Blue is going to be good enough, because if it's Kazuda Blue definitely sees plays, that would be mostly because of Corporate Defense Shuttle, in my opinion. Then in Silver Medal, we got Desperate Commando, a card that, once again, not a lot of people talked about. I did mention that in my first impression review that this card was better than it looks. It simply trades with almost every single 2-drop in the game, which is nice. And especially if you're playing Thrawn, then you actually can trade with any single 2-drop in the game that you were going to be facing, which is very valuable in blue, which was historically a color that really struggled interacting with the opponent early on. So that is kind of a big boost. The fact that you can split the -1/-1 on several units is a pretty big deal. So your opponent open up with double 1-drop with 1 health. You can kill one of the 1-drops, and the -1/-1 goes on the other unit to kill it, so you get 2 for 1. I think this card is really neat. It's really good in Thrawn, but I think it's going to see play outside of Thrawn, because once again, blue did not have access to a lot of cards that allows to basically take good trades early on, so especially blue Heroism, so having access to this is going to be quite nice. So it's going to be not going to see a lot of play, but it's going to see some play. In gold medal, they decided to put the Tier 90 Relief Runner. This card is very solid. It's basically kind of like a Cargo Juggernaut, but a lot more reliable. Cargo Juggernaut always relied on another blue units to come into play to get the heal. Here you get it. You can get this healing over and over again by attacking, and then on the when defeated effect you can heal your base as well, and you can double that healing if you are using Thrawn. So I think this card is going to see a lot of play in Thrawn, and the fact that it's a capital ship can be discounted also means it's going to see play in blue Piet. So that's really great. It's vehicle, it's rebel, it's capital ship, a lot of relevant trades as well. So I really like this card, and I think deserving a gold medal. I mean, it is the best blue card in the set for me, no question asked. Mono blue, of course. Moving on to Villainy command. I remember the days where Villainy command was one of the strongest color in the game. Was the strongest color in the game, and it has declined since then. Hasn't really got a whole lot going on, especially in set 3. Let's see if set 4 can change that. So in bronze medal, we got Wingman Victor 2. This card is really neat. First of all, as I always say, 3/2 for 2 in on the ground is just solid. It's not amazing, but it's definitely nice. And obviously, you are meant to be playing this in some sort of aggressive command Villainy deck, especially, of course, Vader is probably the best fit for it. And you get +1/+1 and leave a token behind is just very nice. It has immediate impact on the game, very low investment. If this gets punished, you're still leaving a TIE Fighter behind. It's just very, very solid. And the flexibility for such a low-cost card is very nice. So I think this card is solid. Will it see a lot of play? I don't know. It's a very archetype-dependent card, so it's hard to say. But definitely in the archetype in which it belongs, for me, it's one of the big reasons to be playing. The Vader Swarm type deck. The even bigger reason to be running the Swarm deck, sorry, the Vader Swarm deck, is obviously the Victor Leader. This card is insane. you get a 2/4 for 3 in space, which is not a bad stat line, and the ability is very strong. Give +1 to all the friendly space units. Obviously, this card is for me, card is the, if ever the Swarm space deck is going to be competitive, that will be 100% because of that card. The amount of value is just insane. It is Imperial as well. This card is just very solid, and it is also a card that I think is going to be a good improvement if you ever want to build on a Tarkin space deck. Victor Leader is also going to be a great addition to this as well. So well deserving of silver medal. And then in gold medal, we got the Invisible Hand. So the Invisible Hand had the potential to be one of the strongest cards in the game, and like one of the strongest cards in the game. Unfortunately, FFG has not yet given us a lot of very strong 2-drop droid in Villainy, which means that the ability is very powerful, but you do need to play a bunch of, in order to make it work, you need to be playing a bunch of Villainy droid that cost 2 or less in your deck, which is not great. So it does, there's a certain trade-off to be able to put this card into your deck. But bro, this card is so strong. Okay, so first of all, of course, just the idea of being able to play this as a 6/6 for 5 in a Piet deck and being able to draw a card or either put a 2-drop into play at the same time is just really, really strong on by itself. And the ability keeps on giving every time this unit completes an attack, which is also incredibly strong. Not only that, it's insane in combination with triple Dark Raid or with Sneak Attack, because then you get to trigger the ability twice, leaving behind, getting a massive swing at 6, and leaving behind 2 2-drops droid, or drawing your 2 cards. Like, it's just really, really nasty. It's an amazing card. It's really good in Piet. It's really good in Doku, and obviously the only thing that we need to make this card better is to have better droid 2-drop, which right now there's a few of them that are nice, but unfortunately most of them are just not really great, and having to put that many bad 2-drops into your deck is kind of feels bad. So I think this card is incredible, but it's only gonna get better. So this is why it's gold medal, because I think there's a lot of potential for it for the future. It's obviously very archetype dependent, so we see if this archetype indeed sees play, and obviously it's a card that is only going to get better as more good Villainy 2-drops are being added to the game. Then we going into Heroism Command, and this color combination got pretty much nothing from set 3, but in set 4 it's the absolute opposite. This card is probably, this color combination has the highest density of strong cards in the entire game. So this is very, very exciting. So there's so many good cards. It was very hard to pick. So I started with a triple honorable mention here with Leia Organa, which is kind of like an improved version of Fleet Lieutenants, assuming you're playing a lot of pilots. You're putting a lot of pilots in your deck. Leaving behind a 3/4 restore 1 is very nice, and then you get a +1 attack and restore 1. It's very nice. It's a bit more narrow than Fleet Lieutenant, so I'm not pretending it is better than Fleet Lieutenant, but it is definitely on the same power level, and the fact that we are even comparing it to Fleet Lieutenant is a testament honor by itself that this card is really strong. Then we got Phoenix Squadron A-Wing. Green-white really needed like better 2-drops in space, and here's one that can pretty much trade with anything in space. So it's just a very solid card in my opinion. And then we got Poe Dameron. And Poe Dameron is just a solid card in general, but it is particularly strong if you combine it, of course, with Han 2 as a leader. You can basically, for Han 2, you get to play this as a pilot, and you get basically a 4/5 in space for 3, which is basically AT Hauler, but you are getting AT Hauler without a downside, which is nasty, really nasty. And of course, you always have the options to get this as a 3/2 on the ground with a 2/2 in space, like the flexibility to break this down into 2 multiple small units. I think if ever we're going to see Han 2 seeing more play in set 3, it is mostly going to be because of that card. It's going to be because of that card, in my opinion. Like if we see Han 2 seeing play in set 2, this will be the reason why that's the case. It's such an amazing card. It is very archetype dependent, so obviously if you're playing it without Han 2, it's become a lot worse, but still is a decent card in my opinion. Moving on, we got bronze. We got, of course, Chewbacca. I talked about, so basically the best starter card ever printed, in my opinion, and it was, in my opinion, also a card that the fact that we putting Chewbacca in third position is crazy, to be honest. This card is just insane. The +3/+3 for 3 that makes the unit cannot be bounced, cannot be defeated by enemy abilities. That is insane. You can play like an A-Wing turn 1. This A-Wing does not get answered. You get to punish the opponent with a massive unit that's going to be hard to kill. And then, of course, you get the flexibility to play it as a 5/6 for 5 on the ground that cannot be bounced. It's an amazing card. So the reason why this is only in bronze medal is because of a couple of reasons. First of all, I can see a meta where the ability is not going to be very useful. If the meta is very based on trying to racing, on trying to exhaust the enemy units, and doesn't really care about defeating stuff, this card is also not amazing. Another thing that made this card a little bit worse than initially anticipated is like it gets countered by no glory only results, which currently, before, obviously, when I initially rated that card, this card was not yet on the picture. So basically control was going to struggle a lot against something like this. With that being said, the third thing that made this card a little bit worse is like there's another card that has been spoiled a little bit later on, which I think is also going to see a lot of play and is really, really in competition with Chewbacca. And obviously those cards are very similar from one another, so obviously having those two cards being printed in the same set, in the same color combination, does hurt how much Chewbacca is going to see play. So I think this card is amazing, but there's a couple of things that has happened later on in the spoiler season that made this card a little bit worse compared to initially thought. So, and this card that makes the Chewbacca worse is Luke Skywalker. So Luke Skywalker is very similar to Chewbacca in the sense that is basically this turn 2 pilot that you want to place on a space unit that survive on turn 1, and is once again very difficult to deal with. It gives a load of stats, +3/+2, and it's hard to deal with because if you deal with a unit that's piloted, it's going to leave behind the 3/2 on the ground. So if I had to compare Luke Skywalker, the two reasons that makes me like Luke Skywalker more than Chewbacca is because Chewbacca can be blown out in a way. There's ways you can kind of blow out someone who plays Chewbacca. We've seen, for example, no glory only result, or even like being able to deal 3 damage and then use Stark in town or whatever. That this is the kind of thing that Chewbacca is not protected against. While Luke Skywalker is kind of, no matter what happened, you're gonna get behind a 3/2, no matter what happened, which is pretty nice. The other thing that makes me like Luke a little bit better than Chewbacca is the fact that it can be played as a 2-drop if need be, and a 3/2 2-drop on the ground is really not bad at all. So I love the flexibility of Luke. Obviously, there's certain situation when you're going to be prefer Chewbacca. There's going to be certain situation where you're going to be preferring Luke. Regardless of what you decide to take, they're both very good cards, and you might want to play both. But yeah, I just place Luke slightly over it, and the fact that Luke is just slightly better than Chewbacca might hurt a lot of the playability of Chewbacca. But yeah, moving on now to the gold medal, and the gold medal is obviously, I think it's not a surprise to anybody, it's obviously Blue Leader. Blue Leader is so amazing. It just obviously comes into play. It's going to have a significant impact on the meta because it's going to be very hard to play a true drop with 3 health with Blue Leader existing because Blue Leader just can come in, just kills it and not die as a result, which is a pretty big deal. And obviously the flexibility to play it as a 5/5 ambush for 5 is also insane. The fact that you can also ambush, of course, for 5 a unit on space and then turn it into a ground unit with some damage on it is also very valuable. It's a rebel. It's great with U-wing reinforcements. It's great in Han. It's great, like, there's just like so much cool thing going on. It's great with Han 1. It's great with Han 2. It's obviously it's a vehicle. It's a fighter as well. Makes it really good with Luke. Like, yeah, there's just like a lot of good things going on with this card. I don't necessarily think it's going to be an auto include because I can definitely see a meta where, like, if everybody plays like 3 2-for-2s, for example, like, this card becomes a lot worse. So I'm not saying it's an auto include, but it is going to be a very powerful. And I think that, here's the thing, I think that even if this card doesn't end up seeing that much play, it's going to have a massive impact on the meta. Because I think this card is just so good against Sabine, for example. Like, I think Sabine is going to struggle so hard against this card. I mean, granted, Sabine can also play this card, but it's gonna suffer against it more than it's gonna benefit from having it. So for that reason alone, this card well deserving of a gold medal. It's such an incredible card. Moving on to command, mono command, and mono command here. A couple of honorable mention. I know I've talked a lot of shit about Turbo Laser Salvo, saying this card was unplayable. And I'm gonna revise this a little bit. So I'm gonna say something. I completely maintain the fact that Turbo Laser Salvo is pretty much a worst overwhelming barrage. So if you are playing overwhelming barrage, there's no reason why you should be wanting to Turbo Salvo unless you want to have more copies of overwhelming barrage. In my opinion, if you're playing this card over barrage, you are 100% wrong. However, if you are of a deck that wants to have more than 3 copies of barrage, sort of, this card is a reasonable alternative. And I'm also going to maintain something that I've said during my rotation video, is that whenever barrage rotates out, I also think Turbo Laser Salvo is going to be kind of seeing a lot more play. And right now, there's actually quite a few decks that really love having more than 3 copies of barrage, mostly Piet and the Doku deck that really likes to play those massive space units very early on in the game. And in those decks, Turbo Laser Salvo is very, very strong. So there's an honorable mention just for that. Another card that not a lot of people talks about, but Timely Reinforcement is another card that, depending on the meta, could be really amazing. The flexibility of being able to play it, that it grows stronger and stronger as the game goes on, the fact that it gives immediate impact, gives sentinels to all of those units, all this is, I think, really, really nice. So I think this card is likely to see some competitive play. Bronze medal, we got Salvage. So Salvage, I think if you're playing Villainy, most likely you're not going to be playing this card because you have access to Palpatine's Baton. But if you're playing Heroism, this is going to be a way for you to bring back vehicles from your discard pile into play. And the fact that you're dealing 1 damage to them is really not that big of a deal. So I think this card is likely to see some play in the sideboard. That's why I give it a bronze medal. Silver medal, we got Eject. So Eject is one of the most powerful combo pieces in the game in combination with Poe. But unfortunately, its playability really completely depends on Poe. This card is not, as I was expecting, it's not really good. It's not a good card outside of Poe. And I think that if you're playing, of course, Poe Leader, it's an incredible card, but it's completely dependent on whether or not Poe is going to see play or not. And I'm going to shock some people, but I've been relatively unimpressed with Poe Dameron as a leader. And I'll explain a little bit more why later in this video. But I've been a little bit unimpressed with Poe. So, but obviously, if you are playing Poe, you're playing Eject 100%. And Eject is a very, very powerful card in this deck. And for that reason alone deserves a silver medal. But once again, didn't want it to rate it higher up because it's going to be dependent on whether Poe is going to see play or not. So it's a bit of a dodgy area. And I'm not entirely sure whether Poe is going to be meta or not. It's a bit hard to say. Number 1, we got Resupply Carrier. This card is a great addition to all those capital ship decks. I'm going to come back to what I was saying. Piet. And obviously Doku Yellow and Piet of any color is going to love playing Resupply Carrier. Also, we could see Resupply Carrier seeing some play in Palpatine, maybe Palpatine Yellow. And yeah, this card is going to be incredible because obviously it's immediate impact on the game. This ramping effect is huge. You get a full 5, which is not great if you play for 6, but obviously if you're playing Piet or if you're playing Doku, you can discount it. It allows you to really get into those higher ups and get those massive space units. So this card is just going to see a lot of play in those decks, and I think those decks are likely to be quite competitive. Now we're going to see Aggression Villainy, which has the reputation of being one of the weakest color combo in the game, but it's getting a lot of help in this set. Tremendous amount of help, in fact. So we're going to start first with honorable mention with the first Order Stormtrooper. I was not a big fan of that card when it got spoiled, and then I started playing against it, and I think this card is actually pretty good. It's very, very close to Stormtroopers, but obviously if you're playing a deck that can utilize the indirect damage, whether it's a new Boba deck, a Boba 3, or a Jango deck, then the card becomes really, really nasty. And obviously also with Thrawn. So it's very, very close in power level to a Death Star Stormtrooper, and it has loads of great synergies with the new leaders and the old leaders as well. and for all those reasons deserve to see some honorable mention. My bronze is going to Darth Vader. So Darth Vader is a card I think a lot of people are underestimating. This card is, first of all, it is one of the best piloting, turn 2 piloting plays you can make in Villainy. So turn 1, any villain units, and then you put a pylon on it. We know Heroism has loads of way to do great with Chewbacca, with Chewbacca, with Luke Skywalker, or even with the Wing Leader. But here, this one is, as far as like the Villainy is concerned, Villainy does not have many great options for turn 2 like piloting like this. I mean, there's Aiden, which is great, but you have to be playing blue to play Aiden. Most aggro deck obviously don't play blue, so if you are, and I think that Vader is even better than Aiden in some level. Be able to ping a unit and then deal 1 damage to a unit if the 1 damage to the base if the unit gets defeated. That's a very strong effect. So that's like a first great thing going on for it. And then the ground units is also quite impressive. 7/7 for 6 is no joke. If you're combining this with Energy Conversion Lab, you can basically one-shot almost every single leader in the game. And then you leave behind a 4th unit, Imperial, that also can, it's also called Darth Vader, so you can put like a Darth Vader lightsaber on it. Like, this card is really, really, really good. It's very flexible. So I think that if you're playing a green, red, black deck, you're really strongly going to be considering playing Darth Vader. I'm not saying it's an auto-include, of course, but you are definitely going to be strongly considering putting it in your deck. Now we go into the territories of the card that I know for 100% sure will see play in competitive Star Wars Unlimited, and we're going to start with IG 2000. Basically, one of the things that kind of kept Django under control in set 3 was the fact that it was very difficult for Django to basically exhaust multiple units at once. It was very, in order for Django to be able to do this, it needed to do like some crazy shenanigan. It needed to have like a couple of Ruthless Raiders in play, and then basically exhaust those exploit those Ruthless Raider with the tank. So then you could kind of like exhaust multiple units at once. So it really had to really combine very specific cards in order to make it work. In this new set, Django can exhaust multiple units at once without any effort. All he has to do is play IGA 2000, relatively affordable card, 4 resource 3/4 Overwhelm, immediate impact on the game, great with triple dark raid. Also great for Django because Django has some trouble in the 4 resource curve. Django really didn't have much to play in the 4 resource curve, so it fits perfectly in Django's curve. So this card is amazing in Django. It is obviously, I don't see this card seeing a lot of play outside of Django. Maybe it will. I think in Cad Bane it's also a card that is going to be a strong consideration. And once again, it's archetype dependent, but I think in the archetype in which it belongs, it is so good that it's deserving to be higher tier in the list. Not only that, the card that I think 100% Django will be meta in this new set, and IGA 2000 is going to be such an amazing upgrade to this deck. And now we're going to gold. So in gold we have obviously the Devastator. So this Devastator is good in so many decks, and that's why it's number 1. It's great in obviously those capital ship decks. So it's a big reason to be playing Piet red, immediate impact on the game, flexibility to deal damage to the base or to the units in whatever order you want. It's also a 9/6, which is amazing stat. So yes, it is expensive, but you can discount it with Piet very strongly. And you can also discount it with triple dark raid, which is another big thing about this deck. This card is obviously the combination with triple dark raid. It is, in my opinion, one of the best. It is probably the best legendary in the set, and it is an amazing card, and it's going to see play in a lot of control in control and aggro alike. It's both an aggro card and a control card, which is pretty insane. And it has a lot of strong synergies in the set between triple dark raid and Django. It's good in Django. It's good in any deck that plays red and triple dark raid, and is obviously great with Piet as well. So just so much going on with this card. It really is as good as people say it is. Then we go into Heroism, Heroism Aggression, and on number 3 we have Red 5. Red 5 is a neat card. It's good with Luke Skywalker, the new Luke Skywalker. It's also quite good with Quinlan, as well as being also a great card for Fennec. So Fennec can really kind of like give ambush to this card, and it can basically resolve the ambush and then resolve the on-attack ability. So guaranteed to deal 5. So that's the kind of 5 into space, which is kind of neat. So it's a good card. Obviously, so 3/4/3 Rebel is on by itself a kind of a strong stat line for cost, and having access to this in red is very nice. It might be a card that's going to replace Red 3. We know Red 3 used to be the go-to 3-drop in space for almost any Heroism deck. Red 5 is going to change that. I think that there's going to be a significant amount of decks, not all decks of course, but a significant amount of decks that are going to prefer to play Red 5 over Red 3, and that alone by itself, well deserving a bronze medal. Silver, we got the black one. The black one is just great. It's obviously amazing in Poe because then you get basically sort of a better version of Sabine in space. But I think it also has, it's just a decent card across the board, as it's obviously get +1 attack when it's upgraded. So obviously I think the meta might be very hostile to 2/3/2 in space, because now we have this 3/3/2 ambush in Heroism, Cunning Heroism, and there's also of course, what's it called? The blue leader squadron that also can ambush for 3/3/3 ambush. So the meta might be very hostile to 3 health, 2 drops, but against anything else that is not that, this card is really a strong upgrade. Getting the +1 attack bonus when you get upgraded is huge, and obviously a great addition to Port Amron. But yeah, whether it's going to see play, once again, I can see a meta where this card is not going to see play, but it is, I think it's undeniably a very strong card. Then in gold medal, I decided to put They Hate That Ship. So They Hate That Ship is very nice. It is kind of a any card reduction, cost reduction card in Star Wars Unlimited, I've always going to see almost always going to see play if it's not too conditional. This one is not conditional. Just just works with any vehicle. So if you're running a red-white deck with a lot of vehicles, this card is almost an auto-include, as allows you to get. It does card disadvantage, but once again, if you're playing Star Wars Limited, card disadvantage is not really that big of a deal, and being able to get this 2 resource discount on some very big spaceship is a really big deal. The 2 TIE fighters that you're giving your opponents most of the time is really not a big deal at all, because you're usually going to be playing very large unit with that card. It also has some sweet combos in the game. Combination, for example, with the new Home one, almost gives in, allows them to play it with the 3 discount, and you can also get the other discount from it. So I need to remember myself, how much discount do you get in total? I think it gets like 6 discount in total, so it makes the card really ridiculously cheap. That's another great thing you can do with that. But this card is really going to see a lot of play, in my opinion. It is, in my opinion, one of the strongest. It's also very good with the new Juggernauts that can come into play and deal 1 damage to any unit, so then you can just kill off the TIE fighters almost right away. Actually right away, and play this card for 4 resources, sort of. So really solid card. It's going to see a lot of play. Moving on to Mono Aggression. So Mono Aggression got so much going on in the set. Basically, Aggression is really getting very strong in the set. So we're going to start honorable mention with the Droid Missile Platform. I think this card is really nice if you're running an aggression aggro deck based on Separatists. This card is going to see a lot of play, because 4/2 stat line for 3 is actually not bad. It means 2 health means it survives all the pings, which we know there's plenty of, and the fact that you can swing for 4 is just very strong, especially if we're in a meta where there's not a lot of space unit, which I know is unlikely to be the case, but let's say if you are in a meta where there's not a space unit, then 4/2 becomes like so much stronger. And then if you deal with it, there's also like a when defeated fight with 3 indirect damage, which is no joke. Obviously, the fact that you can double the effect with Thrawn is huge. The fact that it's a Separatist is huge. For Dooku, it's good for. So if you're playing a Saj aggro, you can play this the bomber, the droid bomber that deals 2 damage whenever you got a Separatist unit into play. So that also helps that as well. So I think it's a solid card. Obviously, it's archetype dependent, so it's not guaranteed to see play, but it's definitely a good reason to be playing a Separatist aggro deck in red. In bronze medal, we got Sham Syndulla. This card is the best sideboard card in this set for aggression. It's really strong against ramp decks. It's really strong against hand decks. because every deck that can add itself additional resources, this guy gives you 5/4 for 4 that ramps you. That's really, really strong. It's a very, very solid card. Obviously, not going to see play everywhere. It's going to be really meta dependent. But I cannot imagine a meta where hand 1 will not see a significant amount of play. And for that reason alone, Sham Syndulla is definitely a great card. Only a sideboard card, that's why it's only bronze medal. And you're going to see the competition in mono red is very, very tough. In silver medal, I decided to put Planetary Bombardment. This card is amazing. It's amazing for 2 reasons. First of all, there's tons of great capital ship in this set. So getting the 12 indirect damage is not that difficult to do. And the second reason is that even without a capital ship, 8 indirect damage to a player is no joke. And if you play this card at the right moment, this is just almost like 6 to 8 damage directly into opponent's base. It's kind of like a double for a cause, I believe in. And it's available to any red deck. And it's very difficult to play around this. If you're playing a control deck that doesn't play a lot of units, it's very difficult to play around this. So it's very difficult to play around this. So it's a card that is going to change the way you play the game. And this is, in my opinion, a card that's really deserving of a special mention, because it's a card that is going to change the way people play the game. Because they know this card exists. It can come out of nowhere and kill you out of nowhere. You're going to have to take into account that any red deck, that, especially the aggressive ones, are going to be playing some amount of copies of Planetary Bombardment in the deck, because the amount of damage that it deals out of nowhere is completely insane. Obviously there are situations where the card is bad, obviously, but most of the time it's going to be amazing, and the fact that it gets even better with capital ship is also great, and it's really reasonably costed at 6 resources as well. In gold medal, there's War Juggernaut. I think this card is a mistake. I think this card is, whatever you think how good this card is, multiply by 10 your expectation. This card is completely absurd. I explain you why. First of all, you got a 6-drop with an immediate impact on the game, and this impact on the game is very significant. You deal 1 damage to each of any numbers of units, so no matter how many units there is, you can deal 1 damage to all of them, and then it gets bigger for every damaged units. So, and you can also do it to your own units to make this thing even bigger. So we're talking about a 6-drop with a significant immediate impact on the game that has absolutely insane stats. 7 health for a 6-drop is very, very good. There's very few units that can deal with there's very few cards that can deal with the 7 health units in the game on turn 5. And obviously, icing on the cake, it's a vehicle. That means you can play it off triple Dark Raid. So this card is one of the best. So you think that, if you think that Riskless Raider is a good triple Dark Raid target, War Juggernaut is better. War Juggernaut is the best triple Dark Raid target in the entire game. Comes into play, deal a bunch of damage to a bunch of units, and then you boost this card. It's amazing in combination with I Hate That Ship. It's it's insane with triple Dark Raid, so it's going to be played in both Villainy and Heroism, and obviously it's insane with Django. If you got Django into play, you get this card, you get to tap down the entire board of your opponent. So let's say you have Django into play, you can play triple Dark Raid, you get War Juggernaut, you tap down the entire board of your opponent, you get a massive unit that comes to play ready, and then get to swing a bunch of million damage into base. And you can deal to your own unit, mean that these guys can get even bigger. So this card is insane. Immediate impact on the game, amazing stats, and strong synergies with existing cards, existing leaders. What else can you ask for? This card is amazing. And I don't think FFG, I'm saying it's a mistake because I don't think FFG was intending this card to be that good. Especially since you can tell it's a mono red, like it's just a one single red aspect combination. It's playable in just so many decks. It's incredible. Now into mono Villainy. Mono Villainy here on bronze medal, we got TIE Bomber. TIE Bomber is neat. 4 health is difficult to take down on as early as turn 1. And then the 3 direct indirect damage is quite a bit. So I like this card if you're making a deck based on indirect damage. TIE Bomber is a really good option as a 2-drop. Silver meta, we got Fat Fire Spray. In my opinion, this is the best reason to be playing the new Boba Fett. Really great with triple dark raid because you get the one playability and then the on attack ability. And if you control Boba Fett, it's 2 damage, so it's like 4 indirect damage in total. That means it's 8 damage in total from triple dark raid, and it's a solid 4 drop. So I think if you're gonna be playing the new Boba, the Boba 3, I think Fat Fire Spray is the biggest reason to play it. Is it gonna be meta? It's gonna be really archetype dependent, so not guaranteed it's gonna see play because it's gonna depend on whether Boba 3 is gonna see play or not. But if it does, this card is definitely gonna be a big reason for it. And then number 1, we got Shuttle ST-149. This card is great in a lot of decks, but it's specifically great in Gar Saxon. Gar Saxon, you get yourself a 4/4/4/4 shielded in space, which is really good. Get the one playability that can be also useful to steal opponent experience token, steal opponent shield, very strong in a mirror match. And of course, it also has the 1 defeated ability to do that again. That also means you get discounted by Cunning, so you can go Cunning turn 1, Shuttle ST-149 turn 2, which is very strong. It is also Imperial Vehicle. It's a decent card to pull out triple dark raid, because triple dark raid you can literally just give the shield to someone else, the shield that the shuttle has to someone else, because you're not going to need it because it's going to die at the end of the turn. I mean, it's going to return back to your hand at the end of the turn. And it's also Imperial, mentioning that it can be boosted by a tie advance, so you can go turn 1, turn 1 Chronic, turn 2 Shuttle, turn 3 you get your tie advance to boost the shuttle, and it's also shielded, so hard to take down. This card is incredible. It's really, really good. So gold medal, it's going to be archetype dependent, so not guarantee is going to see play, but I think it's very, very likely. Mono Heroism is also getting a lot of good cards. So much so that for the first time, I think, I'm going to give some honorable mention to Mono Heroism with the Sabine Masterpiece. I've really talked really poorly about this card, and I still think a lot of people are over-evaluating it, but it is definitely decent in some archetypes. If you're playing ECL, and if you're playing Fennec Shand, I think this card is really nice, because if you can benefit it's as one of the most powerful on-attack ability in the entire game. Granted, you do require to have some units of specific colors to be in play, but nevertheless, if you can do that, that's pretty strong. Like, let's say you just have like a green unit, you can just go ambush, Sabine Masterpiece, give a shield unit, give an experience. It's very archetype dependent. Once again, you really need to be playing ECL. You really need to or Fennec. So it's really kind of like, it's not guaranteed at all that it's gonna see play. But it is good enough that I wanted to give it an honorable mention. My bronze medal goes to 10-4. 10-4 is amazing because it can be played off Human Reinforcement, and I think the Human Reinforcement decks really needed, especially now that the meta is going to turn into much more space focus. It really needed a massive Sentinel in space, and 10-4 is the way to do this. Is the way to have this massive Sentinel is going to block the space arena, and even if your opponent deals with it, it's still going to leave an extra tokens behind, which is very nice. So I think it's great in hand green because you can kind of double ramp, get into 10-4. The fact that it's mono Heroism means that it can be played in a wide variety of different decks. It's a deck that's gonna, I'm not saying the card is amazing, but it serves a purpose in the meta. It's gonna serve a purpose as being this giant Sentinel unit you can almost play in any mid-range to control Heroism deck, and for that reason it all deserves a bronze medal. Silver medal goes to Millennium Falcon, the new Millennium Falcon. As it's a 3/4/3 Rebel is already kind of a very good stat line on its own, and the additional benefit of getting +1 attack for each pilot it has is also quite nice. The combination, of course, with the new Han Solo that can be played as a pilot to give a +2, so it allows us to get 6 attack and not take any damage back, allows it to snipe Fire Spray and snipe Ruthless Raiders without taking any damage back. That's just very strong. So it's not the card of the century, but it's just a very solid card. Moving on, we got our number one spot is for R2. I think this new R2D2 is going to replace the old R2 because I think they're both a 1-4 for 1, but the flexibility of being able to play it as a pilot is more valuable than the look card on top of the deck. Of course, there's still going to be decks that is going to be wanting to play the old R2, but I think in the vast majority of the case, the vast majority of the decks that used to be playing the old R2 are going to be preferring to play the new R2. The fact that it can pilot for 0 is a pretty big deal, and the fact that it can be added on top of another pilot is also kind of a big deal as well. So I think it's a very solid card, and well deserving of a gold medal. It is undeniably, in my opinion, the best mono Heroism card in the set. Moving on, we got our neutrals. Obviously, they are the weakest card of the set. No mention, so I try to do my best to try to select 3 that I think have a small chance of seeing some play. First of all, we got Attack Run. Obviously, not a great card and inferior to a lot of options, but it is definitely a unique effect, and previously decks that were not green or were not red-white, were not green, did not have access to this kind of effect, be able to attack with multiple units at once. So Attack Run, giving access to those decks to be able to attack with multiple units at once, I think is very good. So it's an option that is available to you if you're playing an all-space aggro deck. This option is available to you, so it's a bronze. That's why I give it a bronze medal. Then we got Swarming Vulture Droid. So I don't think this card is going to be competitive, but it is definitely can do some powerful things. If you're playing, let's say, a Doku deck or even a Han deck, you can actually play 3 Swarm Vulture Droids on turn 2. For example, if you're playing Doku, you play turn 1 Confederate Courier, then you use Exploit on turn 1 to put a Swarming Vulture Droids on top of the tokens you're leaving behind. And then on turn 2, you can exploit again to put a second one for free. And then you obviously spend 2 resources to get another swarm. So you get actually 3 Swarm Vulture Droids on turn 2, which means that you get 3 5/2s into play, which is kind of neat. And the fact that you can run 15 copies of this card in deck make this relatively consistent. I don't think this is going to see play. I think that those 2 health space units are unlikely just to be a little bit too squishy. It does not work very well, but it is definitely something interesting that in a certain meta maybe could be good. And of course, it combines very well with the new Invisible Hand that allows you to grab multiple Swarm Vulture Droids relatively easily. So I think this is kind of nice. Once again, very unlikely to see play, but we are in neutral, so don't expect a lot of cards. At number 1, I decided to put Death Star Plants. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I have no idea if this card can be broken. But if it can, this card can be absolutely insane. This might not happen now, this might not happen in the future, but if it does happen, this card can spawn a new deck on it by itself. It's the kind of card that is so unique and has such a powerful effect, but it has insanely powerful downside. But if you can find a way to disable those downsides, which is not impossible, I think this card is great. So I'm not going to go into details about how can this possibly be played because that's not the point of the video, but just say that this is a very unique effect, and once again, we are in mono neutral, so competitions are not very tough. That's why I give it gold medal. Bases. We're going to start with our bronze medal with Data Vault. So Data Vault, I said before, but being able to go beyond the 30 HP is a really big deal in my opinion. Having to increase the size of a deck is a big deal for now, but I think it's going to be lesser and lesser of a downside as we move forward, as we get more cards. Especially if you're running a card that is not super dependent on one specific cards, then a Data Vault is definitely an option that is available to you. And I think that a lot of people should consider running Data Vault. We already seen people doing amazing running 54 card decks. I'm one of the camp that says, I always said that you should always run a 50 card deck, and I said now and I continue to say it, but people overestimate the negative impact that running more than 50 cards has, especially in a game in Star Wars Unlimited where you get to draw 2 cards per turn. So in my opinion, yeah, people overestimate the importance. There were an entire Magic archetype in Modern that basically had to run 80 cards instead of 60 because of a pet. And this deck was one of the strongest decks in the game, and I think this pet got banned. So it's like that gives you an idea that, especially as the card pool becomes bigger and bigger, having increasing the maximum deck size of your deck is not that big of a deal. It's not like the end of the world. For some deck it is, but for some deck it's not. And I think that the vault is going to see some play now, and it's only going to grow bigger and bigger as time goes by. So that's why it gives it a bronze medal. Once again, not saying it's going to see a lot of play, but it's definitely has a huge potential for the future, in my opinion. Then we got Lake Country. So Lake Country is really changing the way we build decks in Star Wars Unlimited, especially mono decks that are running twice the same color. Because now every time you're going to be building up a model deck, like a double command or double vigilance or double or even double aggression, you're going to ask yourself the question, is the couple of cards I'm getting that I might not even draw worth the 4 extra HP on the base? And if the answer is no, then you're going to be running like Lake Country. And the answer might be no for a significant amount of decks. So just like Data Vault, I'm not saying that this card is guaranteed going to see play, but I think it's only a matter of time until a deck answers no to that question and put Lake Country as its base. And for that reason alone, deserves a silver medal. Then we got Colossus, that I put at number 1. I've tried the card, and it's not a card that you want to run in any deck, but in decks that wants it, this card is really, really strong. The 5 extra HP on the base is huge, and starting the deck with 1 less card is not that big of a deal. So I know for a fact that it's going to be very strong in Palpatine Blue. Whether it's going to see play in more decks is going to be up to debate, but I think Palpatine Blue is going to be my anticipation is Palpatine Blue is going to be a very strong force in this new meta, and I think Colossus is going to be a big reason for it. So this is kind of an interesting. Once again, it's very archetype depending, and it's not guaranteed to see play, but it is definitely going to, in my opinion, the best base of this new set. Basically, almost every single base of this new set are potentially interesting and potentially playable, but none of them are guaranteed to see play. That's something I want to say on the record. None of those plays are guaranteed to see play as competitive, but I think among the 6 of them we got, Colossus, the 4 of them that we got, I think Colossus is the highest one. We got 5, sorry. Yeah, Colossus. Now let's talk into the big deal, the leaders. The leaders. So what can we say about the leaders? First of all, I want to go. So in this set, there's a lot of leaders that are competitively playable, but I don't think there's any leaders that really stand out as being like amazing. Unlike previous set where there was always like 1 or 2 leaders where you were like, this leader is amazing. So in set 3 that was Django. In set 2 it was Han 2. And in set 1 of course was Boba. In this set, it doesn't feel like there's a leader that really stands out as being, oh, this leader is going to be amazing. So the ranking has been a little bit difficult for me to put together. But this is what I came up with. First of all, honorable mention, I put 3 leaders. Han Solo, Never Tell Me the Odds. I think this leader is significantly better than what I initially thought. Having a deck that is almost entirely made of odd cost card is not that difficult. And if you can do that, or if you can deck where the +1 attack bonus becomes relatively reliable, the ability to look at the top of the deck, and that means has a lot of great synergies. For example, you can combine with C-3PO, so you can always hit on C-3PO. You can obviously play with your My Only Hope to make it a lot more reliable. There's a lot of great synergies with that ability on top of the +1 attack bonus. So the leader's ability is pretty good. And then you got a leader that deploys on 5 that became a 3/7 for 5, which as you know is a pretty good stat line. And then you got on top of this the ability to be deployed as an upgrade for +3/+4 for 5, which is a lot of stats, turning the card that he equips into a leader, and also gets an immediate impact of being able to untap multiple outcast. I think there's a lot of interesting thing going on with Han. Not guaranteed to see competitive play, but I think it is definitely a leader that I wanted to give an honorable mention to. Then we got Vader. Vader is another interesting leader that I think is a lot better than what I thought it was. His leader's ability is really, really strong. It's the best token generation ability in the entire game. It's better it's much, much better than than not Gunray, which I know is not saying much, but yeah, it's significantly better than not Gunray. And then on top of that, you're getting a leader deployment that's +5/+5 for 6 is very, very strong. And then once again, immediate impact, getting 2 additional fighters. So I think this archetype has a chance to see competitive play. I've been very impressed by Vader as a leader, as a pilot leader. And that's why I wanted to give it an honorable mention. Next, I want Poe Dameron. So Poe Dameron is the opposite of the 2 other leaders. It's not this card overperform. It strongly underperformed compared to what I was expecting. One of the big weaknesses of Poe Dameron is, so first of all, let's talk about the qualities. Obviously, Leader's ability can be very strong, +2/+1 for 1, available at all times, insane combo with Inject, very good stats for the cost, strong color combination, blah, 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 blah. If you go back to my video on when I initially spoiled the support cast for Poe Dameron, I explained in a very lengthy video where I explain everything that's going on with this leader and the reason why it's very good. But here's the thing. It turns out he's not that good. And I'll explain why. The reason why Poe Dameron is not that good is because if you're using the leader's ability and you get a +1/+1 on that means your leaders is not, you're not getting a leader deploy. And your opponent can just decide to kind of ignore or just exhaust the leader that the unit that is equipped. And this way you can just prevent your opponent from deploying your leader. So that's a pretty big downside. Obviously, this can be countered by eject, but what if you don't draw eject? So kind of like the thing that I want to say about Poe is that, first of all, he's a lot more counterable than Sabine. If you're able to kill the 2 drop in space, which is not that difficult in this meta, as I explained earlier, you can't really pull out the combo, so you can just prevent your opponent from ever basically putting Poe as a leader on the unit. And the second problem is like, even if you manage to use Poe Dameron's ability, then you can just ignore him, and then you basically denying your opponent a leader deploy, which is kind of a big deal unless your opponent draws eject. So it's it's basically a lot easier to counter than Sabine. And on the other hand, it's also a lot more reliant on eject compared to Sabine. So it's a lot more unstable. If you draw eject, then it's very strong, but if you don't, then it's a lot worse. So it's kind of like very dependent for specific cards, and it's also quite counterable. So I still think he's a very good leader, and that's why I'm putting in an honorable mention, but I just want to say that he's not nearly as good as I thought he was at the beginning. I was really expecting it to be the best leader in the set, and it turns out to not really be the case. Moving on, we got our bronze medal goes to Admiral Piet. As expected, resource discount leaders are always very strong in Star Wars Limited, and Piet is no exception to this. The basically permanent 1 discount on any capital ship is already very strong by itself. And then the fact that when it's deployed, you get a 2 discount, resource discount, is completely absurd. And the fact that 7 health makes it very difficult to kill. So he's obviously very strong. He's obviously required you to build the deck in a very specific way. So that obviously is a downside. There's not a lot of capital ships that are cheap, making the deck really vulnerable in the early stages of the game. So it's not like the ultimate deck, but I think Admiral Piet decks are going to be definitely a competitive archetypes. I think that there's going to be out there, there's tons of different ways to build Piet. You can play Piet as, you can play it blue, you can play it red, you can play it yellow. So there's one of the 3 versions is going to break through, and I'll be really surprised if there's no version of Piet that sees any competitive play. I think he's a very good leader. Then we got our silver medal goes to Grand Admiral Thrawn. So Grand Admiral Thrawn is another very synergy-based leader, and I've been more impressed by Thrawn than I've been impressed by Piet so far. There's tons of ways to play Thrawn. You can play hard control, you can play aggro, you can play mid-range, you can play exploit, as I showed a deck list in my video previously. There's tons of ways to build them, and all of them seems to be quite competitive. Which one is really going to be meta is going to break through? We're going to find out. But I think Admiral Thrawn is definitely a great leader. His leaderability is so incredibly strong. Yes, the deployment 6 is a bomber, but I think the when defeat ability, the ability is so powerful and has so many good synergies in the set. I have a hard time imagining a meta where there's no version of Admiral Thrawn that sees play whatsoever. I'll be very surprised if it happens. Gold medal and number 1 goes to our friend Kazuda. So Kazuda, I showed a list earlier on my previous video, Kazuda yellow list. There's other ways to build it. You can build it red, you can build it blue. I think the yellow version is the best. Obviously because there's just so many amazing double yellow card. This deck is going to be a great tempo deck. It's different than Han Yellow. Han Yellow is tempo, but it can transition into a value deck, where Kazuda is much more streamlined, much more aggressive. But Kazuda got so much support in this set. The 2 support card that comes in this, the 3 cards Kazuda card that comes into set are amazing in combination with Kazuda. The early deploy is very strong. The thing that he gets deployed for +3/+3 on turn 2 is really amazing. And he's obviously in a very powerful color combination, which is Cunning, Heroism. So there's a lot of great thing going on in this deck. I cannot imagine, I'll be a hard time imagining a meta where Kazuda doesn't see any play. And he's definitely a great leader. He's obviously a leader that requires him to be built in a specific way, unlike the other leaders where there's a wide amount of different archetypes that can be... Kazuda is kind of more limited, but that limited option is extremely scary, in my opinion. So in my opinion, he's the best leader in the set for competitive play, and that's that. I just wanted to, before we go into our best overall non-base and non-leader card in the set, I just wanted to mention that we can currently pick up a deluxe Carbonite booster box on Card Market for 224.5 euros, which is a steal if you ask me. Very cheap. And obviously those guys are limited edition. They're not going to get reprinted. So if you ever want to buy those boosters, now is the good time to do it. Now let's go to the non-leaders. So non-leaders, non-base. Best card in the set. And first we got 2 honorable mention. I got an honorable mention with no glory only results, which in my opinion is the biggest upgrade for control decks, whether you're playing soft control with green or whether you're playing hard control. This card is answering so many problems for those decks. So just wanted to mention it for that. And then we got Command here, which is by far the best sideboard card in set 4 and an amazing card in my opinion. Now let's get into our bronze medal goes to blue leader. I think this card is, as I said earlier, it's going to have just the fact that this card exists is going to have a strong impact on the meta. And this may result in this card not being good, because if people kind of start building against this card, then it's going to become less good and then it's going to see less play. But in my opinion, even if this card doesn't see play, it's still going to have a massive impact on the game. And I think it's going to see play. It's just too flexible, immediate impact, and too good, as strong synergies with a lot of different things in the set. An amazing card. Silver medal goes to Director Cunning. If you see no glory only result was silver medal in the blue-black ranking, you know Cunning is going to be in this top 3. And yes, he's such an amazing 2-drop for the reason I've already explained. And it's going to have a significant impact on the meta. It's going to make blue-black aggro a thing. This card by itself is just so good. And then best card in the set. And in my opinion, it's by far the best card in the set. It's not even close. It is War Juggernaut. So I know a lot of people are going to be surprised to see a card that was not even... This card was spoiled during the draft things. Usually when the card that gets spoiled during the draft stream of FFG are usually terrible because they're just draft cards. And maybe FFG intending this card to just be a draft card, but it turns out this card is amazing. I'm just going to repeat very quickly. Insane stats, immediate impact on the game, amazing synergies with so many cards in set, triple dark raid, with I hate this ship, all that stuff. Insane synergy with what I believe to be one of the strongest leaders in the game, which is Django Fett. This card is just incredible. It's playable in a wide variety of deck because it's only mono red, and it is it's going to change the way it's going to have a significant impact on the meta. I think it's going to be very difficult to be playing swarmy decks just because this card exists. It's an absolutely silly powerful card, and I don't know if this was intended by FFG to make this card that good, but it is an incredible card. And you'll be very like, as I said, whatever you're expecting this card to be, it's 10 times that. It's so powerful. Anyway, and that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below where you agree, where you disagree. Once again, this is only a ranking done basically after playing the set for about a week. So this is obviously still kind of early impressions. The meta is not settled yet, so this obviously has to be taken into account. And we're still about a week away from the official from the release of the set. So obviously all those things makes a little bit difficult to kind of evaluate a lot of those cards, especially out of context of an existing meta. With all that being said, I've obviously done extensive research, extensive amount of playtesting on a lot of those cards, so my opinion is definitely a lot more solid than it used to. And obviously in the video, I will definitely review this ranking and see where I got things wrong and when I got things right. Let me know in the comments below if you agree. Also, you can also post your own kind of ranking of the different cards, and you can kind of play along in this kind of little exercise, and then we can review together your ranking and see what you got wrong, what you got correct. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.